In Star Trek The Next Generation, and later on Star Trek Lower Decks, William T. Riker is typically portrayed as a fun-loving Starfleet officer. He loves playing jazz.
Give me warp in the factor of 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh, the jazz.
Chasing ladies.
What are you talking about? Tracy!
And bluffing his way to victory in poker. Most fans think they'd love to have such a laid-back guy as a boss, but Star Trek has always made it clear that Riker is, in fact, a terrible boss. Follow along as I take a look at 6 pieces of key evidence from the life of Will Riker. The first and most important example of this takes place in the 2-part Star Trek The Next Generation episode Chain of Command. In the episode, Captain Picard, Dr. Crusher, and Lieutenant Worf are sent on a secret mission that leads to Picard being captured by the Cardassians. Its depiction of Picard's torture at the hands of Gul Madrid, played beautifully by David Warner, is one of the most gut-wrenching and iconic story elements in TNG.
Tell me how many lights you see.
While Picard is away, he is replaced by Captain Edward Jellico, played by Ronnie Cox, a character Star Trek wrote for us to hate, with the entire crew disliking him almost immediately.
I'm sure this change in command has taken everyone a little by surprise.
Well, yes, sir.
If someone else is going to be in command of the Enterprise, we want it to be Riker, Data, or Worf. But Jellico comes in with no time for niceties, immediately ordering a major change to the duty roster.
I want readiness reports from each department head by 1400 hours, and a meeting of the senior staff at 1500.
And even getting rid of Picard's fish.
Get that fish out of the ready room.
His brusque demeanor and all-business attitude, while uncommon on Star Trek, are rooted in the singularity of Jellico's purpose. He has been tasked with entering into potentially volatile negotiations with the Cardassians, who he knows have captured Picard, but to whom he cannot tip his hand about the secret mission Picard was on. When he arrives, he's immediately going around the ship barking orders at everyone from Riker to Troy to LaForge, insisting that the crew work harder and faster to improve efficiency and battle readiness. He even makes Troy put on pants.
I prefer a certain formality on the bridge. I'd appreciate it if you wore a standard uniform when you're on duty.
Star Trek The Next Generation had not seen quite this level of command shake up since Riker took the big chair in the best of both worlds, after Picard's abduction by the Borg, begrudgingly naming Commander Shelby his number 1.
Commander, we don't have to like each other to work well together. As a matter of fact, I'd like you to continue to keep me on my toes.
The emotional friction and the merciless shake-up of the normally comfortable and smoothly flowing Enterprise can be off-putting to viewers who are used to siding with Riker and the other bridge officers. But the fact is that Star Trek's Jellico had intimate knowledge of the potential threat they faced in the Cardassians.
If these negotiations fail, we could find ourselves in a war zone, and if that happens, I want to be loaded for bear.
And knew the ship and her crew were not ready for the encounter, especially if a battle were to break out.
These stations should be devoted to damage control and weapons status from now on.
Star Trek's captains don't usually behave like Jellico, but neither are they often thrust onto an unfamiliar ship with an urgent, dangerous mission for which they have to prepare in a very short amount of time. Rarely, also, are they met with such pushback and direct insubordination.
Yes, sir.
Jellico's seemingly not Star Trek attitude, of showing no concern for how things had been done before, especially raises the ire of Riker. Early into his command of the Enterprise, Jellico orders Riker to switch the duty schedule from its standard 3-shift rotation to a 4-shift rotation.
We have a standard 3-shift rotation.
I'd like to change that to 4 starting tonight.
Later, when Jellico mentions Delta Shift, Riker tells him there is no such shift, because he hasn't switched the crew to a 4-shift rotation as ordered.
There is no Delta shift yet, sir.
The commander does explain that he hasn't followed those orders because his senior officers claim it will lead to significant personnel problems. However, once you do the math, it's almost impossible to take Riker's side in this matter. Under a 3-shift rotation, each crew member would work 8 hours a day. Under a 4-shift rotation, they'd only have to work 6 hours a day. Imagine getting a new boss who wants to make sure you work less and having one of your old supervisors insist that you need to work 25% more each day just because he and his buddies don't want to put in the work to make the change. It gets worse in context of the episode. In the episode, the crew must deal with Cardassians who have captured Captain Picard and are very likely to capture Minos Corva, a Federation planet with great strategic value. By having the crew work fewer hours each day during this mission, Jellico can ensure that everyone has enough rest, and that's especially important when he starts running battle drills to make sure everyone is ready for potential combat.
Schedule 4 battle drills, 1 for each shift.
It's clear that Riker's real reason is that he's trying to maintain the ship's status quo in the face of an outsider who wants to shake things up at the expense of his crew's health and safety. In a more serious act of disobedience, Riker then bucks the captain's command decisions when he refuses to tell the Cardassians he knows they have Picard. Riker's opposition to Jellico is so strong that Jellico relieves him of duty.
Then maybe it's time you found other responsibilities. You're relieved.
And makes Data his first officer. Captain Edward Jellico might be deeply unpopular, but he was the right person for the job. Jellico was right. Riker was not.
It's been an honor serving with you.
That's hardly the only time Riker has screwed up at being the boss. Sure, he made the right move in best of both worlds eventually, but until someone else reminded him that now the Borg know everything Picard knows.
If the Borg know everything he knows, it's time to throw that book away.
He'd planned to go right on executing Picard's orders,
Fire.
as if nothing had changed at all. So, the Enterprise D survived that blunder. But ultimately it was Riker in command who let the Enterprise D get destroyed by a weak-ass Klingon bird of prey in Star Trek Generations. Working shields or not, a Galaxy-class starship should have been able to turn the Duras sisters' ship into Swiss cheese. There was also that time he was barely able to beat the sonar. If the Enterprise E hadn't been flying through the middle of a flammable fart, he'd probably have gotten that Enterprise blown up as well. Riker's bad leadership doesn't end with disobeying orders and getting his ships blown up. He's also culturally insensitive and seems to encourage xenophobia amongst his own crew, as shown in the extremely gross short trek, The Worst Contact. He bails on a friendly first contact just because the aliens don't have a cultural taboo around boogers.
Look, Gorn invaders!
What? Oh, no!
Okay, I may actually give him a pass on that one. It was pretty gross. But, more recently, there's the final season of Star Trek Picard, in which Captain Riker ends up in charge of the Titan A and, when things get tough, he basically gives up and yells at his best friend for no apparent reason.
Remove yourself from the bridge. You've just killed us all.
His reluctance to do anything and his insistence on playing the blame game almost got Picard and everyone on the Titan under his command killed. Riker can,
when we buried our son,
and did blame grief over the death of his kid for his bad decision-making. But Captain Picard kicks Soren's ass 5 minutes after finding out his entire family had just been burned to death in a fire.
Burned to death in a fire.
5 minutes later.
William T. Riker is the kind of man who can't even make a pizza without something getting destroyed in the process.
Burnt tomato.
Forget the Romulans and the Borg. William T. Riker, the biggest threat you have to worry about is your employees unionizing because you're such a terrible boss.
Yes!
Disagree? Take off your fake sideburns and make your case in the comments on this video. And while you're yelling at us, don't forget to subscribe.
Get it done.
Until next time,
In the factor of 5, 6, 7, 8.
this has been Giant Freakin' Robot.
I'll be on the bridge.